Hey there, Doug from BrainGrid. Vibe coding was actually coined exactly a year ago today. Today's February 2nd, 2026. And the tweet that Andre Karpathy said, hey, I'm doing this new thing. It's called vibe coding, where I just let the LLMs take over and build, and I just type in English and it gives me what I want. Now, vibe coding had been around longer than the actual name. It's been around for a couple of years, but over the last year, it's really taken off. And one of the reasons for that is the tools have just, the number of tools has grown exponentially, but also the power and the capability of those tools has also just grown to such a degree that if you're not vibe coding a little bit, you're probably falling behind. The Stack Overflow study from the end of 2025 said that 84% of developers are vibe coding or planning to start, and 42% do it every single day. You know, the number of tools has grown so significantly, and the power of the tools has grown so much that, like, by Christmas time, Karpathy is saying, actually, there's too much going on. I can't keep up. This is the guy who worked for Tesla, who worked for OpenAI. He is world renowned as an expert in AI, and he's been vibe coding since the start. So as a founder, you want to build your application, and the vibe coding tools out there can do that for you. Like, it's there, the power is there to do that work, but there are a zillion tools out there. So we've just published a blog post at BrainGrid looking at the top 7 vibe coding tools here in early 2026, and comparing them to see how they do with a very simple prompt. The prompt is the one that's right here, and I'm sort of creating a very simple SaaS application. It's a daily check-in. How stressed out are you? How focused are you? What's your energy? And then it sort of gives you a hint like, hey, maybe you should just chill a little bit today, or like, dang, you're raring to go. Like, kick it until you can't stand anymore, right? Simple enough that I can create it in one prompt, but not so simple that it's a trivial task. And what I did is I plugged this into 7 different vibe coding tools to see what would come out. And I thought maybe in this video we would just see a few of those examples so that you get an idea of how those look. So Lovable is an all online, it's all based in the browser, so you don't need to have a lot of Git or programming experience. It's just you type in the LLM and it creates something for you. And in one prompt, this is what it created for me, right? You can see I can slide my energy, I can slide my focus, and it gives me a score, and it gives me an insight. So if I am looking good, this sort of turns greenish, and it says, like, you're in the zone. But if things aren't so great, it's like, just chill out a little bit and then get started. Works great, right? One prompt, perfect. Another tool that is completely online and built in the browser is Bolt. And Bolt's built the same tool, but it actually had a login. I had to create a login, and then when I sign in, you can actually see that it has a database. And so in this case, the LLM took my prompt and did something a little different. You know, this bit, not so different. But it also, now I can track how I'm doing over time because there's a database and it's storing that information in that database based on my login. So, you know, it extended that SaaS a little bit further without any further prompting. The Vercel app is, again, very, very similar. But if you look, this is the first one with buttons instead of sliders. And instead of 0 to 10, it went 1 to 5. Again, same idea. This one isn't stored sort of like Lovable. These are all things that obviously can get built onto. Replit, again, I have to sign in with Replit. And then it says, hey, you haven't done anything yet. And then you sign in. And again, it looks similar. It doesn't actually slide. It's sort of got this funny bouncing thing going on. And then Replit is actually the only one that it doesn't complete the check-in. This probably could have been very easily fixed with 1 or 2 more prompts. That's what vibe coding is. Oh, the complete check-in button doesn't work. What are the next steps to make that happen? But in evaluating these, I wanted to give them all about the same amount of prompting. It still looks good. It sort of matches exactly what I wanted to do. I built this one with Windsurf. Windsurf is actually an IDE, so you can actually code in the IDE and build, in a more traditional programming way. But there's also this agentic AI, and it built a Vite app, I believe. And you can see as I change this, it sort of changes my score. And it has a save, but I don't know what it actually does with that save. I think it might be saved in local storage, but there's no actual way to pull that out. Now, granted, saving it into local storage will help me expand this application out with future prompts if I wanted to. Here's the tool built with Claude Code. Claude Code is it's a command line interface that you use inside your IDE, and so you just type in the terminal and you ask it to do things. Same prompt, very similar looking application, and you can continue. It works exactly the same way. And then the last one to look at is going to be Cursor. Cursor didn't use React or Vite or any frameworks. It actually simply created 3 files: an HTML, a CSS, and a JavaScript file. Really, really basic, sort of old school web development, but that's fine. Like, it does the trick. Clearly there might be some stuff here where we want to make these all the same length, or my OCD is going a little nuts here. They're not, I think because of the text, they're not quite all the same length, but that's okay. Still works, does the job. With one prompt, all of these tools did a pretty excellent job. They built something that's pretty close to what I asked for. Now, we can see that they all sort of went off the track a little bit. They all did something a little bit differently. Either it's in colors, or whether it's sliders versus buttons, or whether it was the frameworks used. Is there a login in front? Is there a database in use? They all sort of went a little, I don't want to say off the rails, but they sort of took their own path to coming to that final solution. Now, that's cool in this case, right? It's nice to see that sort of selection. It's also really nice to see that they were all, for the most part, completely successful in generating my vibe-coded app. But if you were actually building a SaaS, you'd want to go past this initial MVP, it works, that eureka, it works. So what's the next step? The next step is you really want to start thinking about, what am I trying to build? What are the next features that I want to add? And with vibe coding, you can say, now I want a database, and I want to store the values, blah, 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 or I want to add login, and it'll do that for you. But that's sort of like flying by the seat of your pants a little bit. In traditional organizations, you would have a product manager that would figure out all the features that wanted to be built, and then create the requirements, and then figure out how long each one of those requirements are going to take to build, and then prioritize those. And when you're a founder of vibe coding, obviously you don't have that until you go and you use BrainGrid. It'll create a detailed requirements document. And in this case, I'm showing the epic story. This is the thing we want to build. And here's the core value prop, who's going to use it, what will it do, what are the assumptions, and then it walks through all of these different things. You might check in, you might want to look at your trends, you might want insights or streaks, like the Duolingo. Hey, you've done your Duolingo for 10 days. And then you can set preferences to get charts. So it sort of thought a little bit ahead for you, because it's important to think ahead rather than just fly by the seat of your pants. There's nothing wrong with flying by the seat of your pants, but the more organized you are and the more reasoned you are thinking through these problems, the better your prompts will be and the better you will architect your application. So it created this really long document. It's 317 lines long, walks through all of these different things. And then from that, I used BrainGrid to create a number of requirements. And you can see here there's 7 requirements. And if you walk through these requirements, it's requirement 1 and 2 that will get us to that MVP that we've seen in all of the other vibe coding tools. These are going to take a little longer. They're going to be more tasks, but it's going to be more detailed, and it's going to help build that framework, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, so if you build a nice solid foundation and then you start building your MVP and then building on top of that MVP, it's going to go a lot smoother because you've already built that really solid foundation, right? Building that local storage, that data management system. And then requirement 2 is, hey, we'll build the interface where we actually see it. Each one of these requirements gets cut down into tasks. You can see there's 6 tasks on that first requirement. And with all of the vibe coding tools I've showed you, you can connect BrainGrid in. So you can say, I want to build project 5 requirements 1 and 2, and the agent inside your vibe coding tool will be able to read all of these tasks. Now let's look at these tasks. A lot of times when you are vibe coding, you're like, no, that's not what I want this. But it's not a real detailed prompt. It's not giving the AI those exacting definitions that you really need to get exactly what you want. But when you use BrainGrid, all of a sudden you've got 64 lines that really describe, it sort of keeps the AI in its lane. It keeps it focused on exactly what it needs to do. And then it builds exactly that rather than sort of going off, oh, I'm going to build a login screen and I'm going to build a database, because we didn't ask for that. So by using BrainGrid along with vibe coding tools, you can be a founder with no coding experience. You tell BrainGrid, here's what I want. It gives you the requirements document. It builds out the tasks that you can then send to your vibe coding tool, and your vibe coding tool can build for you. In the blog post, I sort of talk, how do you choose your vibe coding tool? The ones that are built into the browser generally require less coding experience, less familiarity with Git, and branches and version control, whereas the ones that are in an IDE are geared a little bit more towards developers. And then at that point, it's sort of figuring out which one meets your budget and the way you tend to work. But I do definitely recommend throwing BrainGrid in front of any of those, because it's really going to help you organize your thoughts. And I have found when I'm vibe coding, the more organized my thoughts are before I give the AI or my agents a task, the better that task is built. So by using BrainGrid, you really simplify that, because the AI helps you create that laser focus. So vibe coding, it's going to continue to take off here in 2026 and beyond. If you haven't gotten started, I just recommend jumping in and trying one of the tools that we have listed in our blog post. And as you start building, try BrainGrid out. I think you'll find that the prompts that are generated end up providing you with better code at the end. At the end of the day, vibe coding is designed to increase your productivity and build faster. But if you have high quality prompts from a tool like BrainGrid, it elevates that vibe coding to that next level and that next level of productivity. Thanks for watching.